The Galactic Academy of Xenobiology floated in the darkness of space like a small moon. It was old, very old. 3,000 years of students had walked through its silver halls. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had tentacles that moved like snakes. Some were made of living crystal that sang when light touched them. But none of them had ever seen a human before. Daniel Park was the first. He stepped off the transport ship with a small bag over his shoulder. He was 22 years old, with dark hair and brown eyes. By Earth standards, he was completely normal. Average height. Average build. He smiled easily and laughed often. Back home in California, nobody would look twice at him on the street. But here, in this place among the stars, every eye turned to watch him walk. Daniel noticed the staring. He waved at a group of tall blue creatures with too many arms. They stepped back quickly, pressing themselves against the wall. He smiled at a small fuzzy being that looked like a mix between a cat and a mushroom. It squeaked in terror and ran away. "Okay," Daniel said to himself. "That's a little weird." He checked his translator device and followed the signs to the registration office. The hallways were wide and bright. Strange plants grew in glass containers along the walls. Some of them glowed. One of them seemed to be watching him with something like eyes. "Hello there," Daniel said to the plant. The plant shivered and looked away. At the registration desk, a creature made of floating geometric shapes processed his paperwork. It spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Human, first of your kind. Assigned to basic xenobiology courses. Room 447 in the Habitat Wing. Warning has been noted." "Warning?" Daniel asked. The shape creature paused. Its geometric pieces rearranged themselves nervously. "Your species originates from a Category 7 death world. Other students have been advised to maintain safe distance. Standard protocol for Death World species." Daniel blinked. "Death World? You mean Earth?" "Correct. High gravity. Corrosive atmosphere. Extreme temperature variations. Abundance of apex predators. Toxic plant life. Bacterial and viral threats beyond standard measurement." The creature paused again. "How are you alive?" Daniel laughed. "I don't know. Luck, I guess." The creature made a sound that the translator could not interpret. It handed Daniel his room key and his class schedule. Daniel thanked it and walked away, still smiling. Behind him, the geometric creature immediately filed a report to campus security. Daniel's room was small but comfortable. The bed adjusted itself to match his body temperature. The walls could change color based on his mood. A small robot offered him food and water in 17 different forms. He unpacked his few belongings. A photograph of his family. Some books. A small stuffed dog that his little sister had given him for good luck. He placed it on the shelf above his bed and patted its head. "We made it, buddy," he said. The next morning, Daniel went to his first class. The room was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising up in circles around a central platform. There were maybe 50 students. Daniel counted at least 20 different species. Nobody sat near him. He took a seat in the front row. The chair next to him remained empty. The chair on his other side also remained empty. In fact, there was a gap of 3 seats on each side before any other student would sit. Daniel didn't mind. More room for his legs. The professor arrived. His name was Thelvan, and he was terrifying. He stood 7 feet tall with a body like a giant insect. Black armor covered him from head to toe. He had 4 arms, 2 large compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. But his voice was surprisingly gentle. "Welcome to Introduction to Xenobiology," Professor Thelvan said. "In this course, you will learn about the many forms life takes across our galaxy. You will study predators and prey, parasites and hosts, the beautiful and the deadly. His compound eyes found Daniel in the front row. They lingered there. I see we have our exchange student from Earth. Welcome, human. I hope your time here will be educational. Thank you, Professor, Daniel said. I'm excited to learn. Around him, students whispered. Their translators picked up fragments. It talks. It seems calm. Why is it not afraid of Thelvan? Humans must be stupid. Professor Thelvan continued his lecture. He talked about the classification of life forms. He talked about the food chains that existed on different planets. He talked about predators, about creatures that hunted and killed to survive. Tomorrow, he said at the end of class, we will have a practical demonstration. I strongly advise all students to eat a light breakfast. Many of you will lose it. The students laughed nervously. Daniel wrote in his notebook, practical demonstration tomorrow. Bring snacks? After class, a student approached him. She was Velrathi, a species with green scales and golden eyes. She moved like water, smooth and graceful. Her name was Grace Kim. The Velrathi often chose names from the cultures of species they admired. Grace had chosen a human name from old Earth records. You are the human, she said. It was not a question. That's me, Daniel said. I'm Daniel. I am Grace. I wanted to warn you about tomorrow. What about it? Grace's scales shifted colors, turning slightly pale. Every year, the Academy brings in a live apex predator for the demonstration. They want to teach students respect for dangerous creatures. They want to show us what true fear feels like. Sounds educational, Daniel said. Grace stared at him. Students have died, Daniel. Not often. The safety measures are usually enough. But the creatures they bring are among the most dangerous in the known galaxy. Daniel nodded slowly. I appreciate the warning. What kind of creature are they bringing this time? Grace's scales went even paler. I heard rumors. They say it is a shadow maw. The word meant nothing to Daniel. Is that bad? It is extinction, Grace said. The shadow maw comes from the death, moon of Corbin 7. No sentient being has ever survived an encounter with one in the wild. They hunt by fear. They can taste your terror in the air. And when they find it, they strike. Daniel thought about this. Can I pet it? Grace stared at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound that his translator interpreted as complete mental breakdown and walked away without another word. Daniel watched her go. Then he shrugged, packed up his notebook, and went to find the cafeteria. He was hungry, and tomorrow sounded like it would be an interesting day. Daniel woke up early the next morning. He took a shower. He ate a good breakfast. He packed his notebook, 2 pens, and a small bag of dried fruit he had found in the cafeteria. Then he walked to the demonstration hall with a smile on his face. The hall was different from the normal classrooms. It was much bigger, shaped like an arena. Seats rose up in steep rows around a central pit. The pit was surrounded by energy barriers that hummed with power. Security drones floated at every exit. Armed guards stood at attention near the doors. Daniel found his usual spot in the front row. Students filed in slowly. They moved in groups, staying close together. Many of them looked sick with fear. The Mindori, a species of small glowing beings, had turned almost completely dark. This meant they were terrified. The Velrathi warriors sat in the back rows, as far from the pit as possible. Even they looked nervous. Grace found Daniel and sat down next to him. This surprised him. Yesterday, she had seemed afraid to be near him. You came to the front, he said. I wanted to see your face when you finally feel fear, she said. All species feel fear, even Deathworlders. I want to see it happen. Daniel smiled. Fair enough. Want some dried fruit? Grace looked at the small bag in his hand. You brought snacks to a predator demonstration? The professor said we might lose our breakfast. So I brought extra breakfast. Grace made that sound again. The translator still said, complete mental breakdown. Daniel was starting to think it might actually mean something like a laugh. The lights in the hall began to dim. Students grew quiet. The hum of the energy barriers grew louder. Professor Thelvan walked to the center of the pit, his forearms spread wide. Students, he said, today you will learn the most important lesson xenobiology can teach. You will learn respect. You will learn that the galaxy is full of creatures more powerful, more deadly, and more ancient than you can imagine. He turned in a slow circle, looking at every face in the crowd. Some of you will become researchers. Some will become explorers. Some will work on colony worlds at the edge of known space. And someday, if you are unlucky, you will meet something like what you are about to see. He gestured toward a large door at the far end of the pit. When that day comes, you must know how to respond. You must know when to run. You must know when to fight. And most importantly, you must know when you have no chance at all. The door began to open. Today, we have brought you a Shadowmaw. The students gasped. Some of them stood up, looking for exits. The guards raised their weapons. The energy barriers flickered brighter. Remain calm, Professor Thelvan said. The barriers will hold, probably. That last word did not help anyone remain calm. The door opened fully. For a moment, there was only darkness beyond it. Then something moved in that darkness. Something huge. The Shadowmaw entered the pit. Daniel had seen pictures of dinosaurs in books. He had watched documentaries about deep-sea creatures. He had visited zoos and seen lions and tigers and bears. But he had never seen anything like this. The Shadowmaw was black. Not just dark, but truly black, like a hole in reality. Light seemed to fall into it and never come back. It moved on 6 legs, each one ending in claws that curved like sickles. Its body was covered in scales that shifted and moved like living shadows. Its head was the worst part. It had no eyes. Just a smooth, dark surface where eyes should be. But it clearly could see. It could more than see. Its forked tongue slid out of its mouth, tasting the air. Electricity crackled along its surface. Spines along its back rose and fell like waves on an ocean. The creature was the size of a small bus. It weighed at least 3 tons. And it was looking directly at the students. Someone screamed. That was all it took. The Shadowmaw opened its mouth. It had teeth. So many teeth. They spiraled back into its throat like a whirlpool of knives. And it roared. The sound was not just loud. It was wrong. It hit something deep in the brain, something old and primitive. It said run. It said hide. It said you were going to die. The students broke. They ran. They screamed. They climbed over each other, trying to reach the exits. The Mindori fainted in their seats, their lights going completely dark. The Volrathi warriors ran faster than anyone, their ancient instincts taking over completely. Even Professor Thelvan stepped back, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Within 30 seconds, the hall was empty, except for one person. Daniel Park sat in his front row seat. His notebook was open on his lap. His pen was in his hand. His bag of dried fruit sat next to him, still half full. He had not moved. The Shadowmaw stopped roaring. Its tongue flickered out again, tasting the air. It had felt the fear of 100 students wash over it like a wave. That fear was delicious. That fear was power. That fear was what had hunted Dodd, but now it tasted something else. Something different. Something it had never encountered before. The human was not afraid. The Shadowmaw turned its eyeless head toward Daniel. It took a step closer to the barrier. Then another. Its claws scraped against the floor of the pit, leaving deep marks in the metal. Daniel looked up from his notebook. "Hey there," he said. "You're a big one, aren't you?" The shadow maw pressed against the barrier. The energy field crackled and sparked. The creature's tongue flickered faster, confused. Where was the fear? Every living thing felt fear when it roared. Every living thing ran or froze or died. But this small creature just sat there, looking at it with curious eyes. "It's okay," Daniel said. "I know that was a lot, all those people screaming. Must have been loud for you too. Scary, even." He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of dried fruit. "Are you hungry?" "I don't know what you eat. Probably not fruit. But maybe you want to try?" He held it up toward the barrier. The shadow maw stared at him. The most dangerous predator on the death moon of Korriban 7. A creature that had killed thousands of beings across dozens of worlds. Stared at a small human holding out a piece of dried mango, and it did not know what to do. In the observation booth above the pit, Professor Thelvan watched through cameras that were still recording. His compound eyes could not blink. But if they could, they would have. "What?" he whispered to himself. "Is that human doing?" Behind him, Grace had returned. She stood at the window, her scales shifting through colors that had no names. "I wanted to see him feel fear," she said quietly. "But he does not feel fear. He feels nothing." "How does he feel nothing?" Professor Thelvan had no answer. In the pit below, Daniel put away his dried fruit and picked up his pen again. "That's okay if you're not hungry," he said to the shadow maw. "Let me just take some notes while you're here. You really are beautiful, you know that? In a scary kind of way, but still beautiful." He began to write. The shadow maw continued to stare. Neither of them moved for a very long time. The shadow maw had been alive for 300 years. In that time, it had hunted on 17 different worlds. It had killed creatures of every shape and size. It had learned that all living things followed the same rules. They feared. They ran. They died. But this small creature broke every rule. The shadow maw circled the barrier, its 6 legs moving in perfect silence despite its massive size. Its tongue kept flickering out, tasting the air again and again. It was searching for something. Fear left a taste in the air. Cortisol, adrenaline, the chemical signals that prey animals produced when death was near. The shadow maw had tasted these chemicals 1,000,000 times. They were like a trail of light leading to food. But from the human, there was nothing. No, that was not quite right. There was something, but it was not fear. The shadow maw tasted curiosity, wonder, interest. These were strange chemicals. They did not make sense. Prey did not feel wonder when looking at a predator. Prey did not feel interest. Prey felt only the desire to live and the knowledge that they might not. The creature stopped circling. It stood directly in front of Daniel, separated only by the humming energy barrier. It was so close that Daniel could count the individual scales on its face. He could see the electricity sparking along its tongue. He could feel the heat coming off its massive body. "You're stressed," Daniel said softly. "I can tell. The way your spines keep moving. The way you're breathing so fast. You don't like it here, do you?" The shadow maw tilted its head. The movement was strange, almost like a dog hearing a new sound. "This place is too bright, too loud, too many strange smells. And all those people screaming at you. That must have been terrible. Nobody likes being screamed at." In the observation booth, Professor Thelvan was calling for backup. Security teams were rushing toward the hall. Scientists from the xenobiology department were watching through cameras, recording everything. "Should we remove him?" a guard asked. "We cannot lower the barrier while the creature is agitated," Telvan said. If we open any gap, it will attack. But the human, is he in danger? Telvan watched the screen. The Shadow Maw was not attacking. It was not even trying to attack. It was just standing there, looking at Daniel with its eyeless face. I do not know, Telvan admitted. I do not know what is happening. Grace stood beside him. Akmayom. Her scales had turned a color that meant deep confusion. The human is talking to it, like it is a pet. Humans are insane, another scientist said. This confirms it. Down in the pit, Daniel had put away his notebook. He was sitting cross-legged on his seat now, his hands resting on his knees. He kept his body relaxed. He kept his voice soft. You know, back on Earth, we have lots of predators. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, sharks, spiders, all kinds of things that could kill us. And some of them did kill us back in the old days. But we learned something about them. The Shadow Maw's spines lowered slightly. We learned that fear doesn't always help. Sometimes fear makes things worse. If you run from a bear, it chases you. If you scream at a dog, it gets more aggressive. But if you stay calm, if you show them you're not a threat, sometimes they calm down too. The creature took a step back from the barrier. Its massive body was still tense, but something had changed. Something in its posture had shifted. My grandpa used to say that animals can read people. They know when you're scared. They know when you're angry. And they know when you're peaceful. You just have to show them which one you are. Daniel slowly raised his hand. He pressed it flat against the energy barrier. The field crackled around his fingers, but it did not hurt. It was designed to stop the creature, not the students. I'm peaceful, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. Nobody here is going to hurt you. You're safe. The Shadow Maw stared at his hand. Its tongue flickered out one more time, and then it tasted something new, deep in Daniel's brain. In parts that he did not even know existed, ancient chemicals were flowing. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Dopamine, the reward chemical. Serotonin, the calming signal. These were the chemicals that humans produced when they looked at something they cared about. When they looked at a puppy. When they looked at a baby. When they looked at anything small and scared that needed protection. Daniel was not feeling fear. He was feeling affection. The Shadow Maw had never tasted affection before. In 300 years of hunting. In 17 worlds of killing. No creature had ever felt affection while looking at it. Every being in the galaxy saw the Shadow Maw and felt only terror. They could not help it. It was built into their genes, carved into their very souls. But not humans. Humans looked at predators and thought, maybe I can be its friend. The Shadow Maw's spines went completely flat. Its body relaxed. The electricity along its tongue faded to a gentle spark. And slowly, carefully, it lowered its massive head. It pressed against the barrier, right where Daniel's hand was touching. Oh, Daniel said softly. Oh, that's it. That's a good girl. You just want someone to be nice to you, don't you? In the observation booth, complete silence. Every scientist, every guard, every student who had crept back to watch on the screens stood frozen. They watched the most dangerous predator in known space nuzzle against a human's hand like a cat asking for pets. Lower the barrier, Professor Thelvan said. Sir? The guard looked at him with wide eyes. That would be extremely dangerous. Lower it. Now. The barrier flickered and died. The Shadow Maw stepped forward. It could have killed Daniel in an instant. One bite, one swipe of its claws, one burst of the electricity that lived in its body. Instead, it lay down, right next to Daniel, right at his feet. It curled its massive body around his seat like a dog curling around its owner. It rested its head in his lap, completely covering his legs with its weight, and it closed its non-existent eyes. Daniel's hand moved automatically. He scratched behind where ears might have been. He stroked the scales along its neck. He felt the rumble of something building in its chest. The shadow maw was purring. "Good girl," Daniel whispered. "Good girl. You're okay. Everything is okay now." Grace watched from the observation booth. Her translator was struggling with what she was saying. It kept offering words like impossible and miracle and what is happening, but none of them seemed strong enough. Finally, she found the right words. "The human has tamed it," she said. "The human has tamed the shadow maw." Professor Thelvan's mandibles clicked rapidly. "No, not tamed. Something else. Something more." "What do you mean?" The professor pointed at the screen. At Daniel's face. At the expression he wore as he petted the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. "Look at him. He does not look like a tamer. He does not look like a conqueror. He looks like what? Like someone who just found a lost dog and brought it home." In the pit below, Daniel continued to pet the shadow maw. It continued to purr. Neither of them had any idea that they had just changed the galaxy forever. They were too busy being comfortable with each other. By the time Daniel left the demonstration hall, everyone knew. Students who had run away told their friends. Guards told other guards. Scientists sent messages to other scientists on distant worlds. The story spread like fire through dry grass. A human had walked into a room with a shadow maw. The human had not run. The shadow maw had fallen asleep in his lap. Nobody believed it at first. It was impossible. The shadow maw was not a pet. It was not an animal that could be calmed with soft words and gentle touches. It was death itself, given 6 legs and too many teeth. It had killed entire colonies. It had hunted species to extinction. Then they saw the video. Professor Thelvan released the recording to the Academy's internal network. He said it was for educational purposes. He said students needed to see what had happened so they could understand it. But really, he released it because he needed other people to believe what he had seen with his own eyes. Within an hour, the video had been viewed 10,000 times. Within a day, it had spread to every corner of the Academy. Within a week, it had escaped into the wider galaxy. And then everyone wanted to meet Daniel Park. He found reporters waiting outside his door. He found scientists trying to follow him to class. He found students who used to avoid him, now trying to sit as close to him as possible. "I just want to eat lunch," Daniel said to Grace one afternoon. They were hiding in a small garden behind the library. It was the only place where nobody had found them yet. "You changed everything," Grace said. "You cannot expect things to be normal now." "I didn't change anything. I just sat still." Grace's scales shifted to a color that Daniel had learned meant frustration. "You sat still while facing a shadow maw. That is not normal. That is not something any species in the galaxy can do. Any species can do it. You just have to not be scared. We cannot choose to not be scared. Fear is automatic. It is built into our bodies. When we see a predator, our brains tell us to run. We cannot stop it." Daniel thought about this. "Really? You can't control it at all?" "No. Some species can manage their fear better than others. The Velrathi are famous for their courage. But even we cannot eliminate fear entirely. It is always there, underneath everything else." "That sounds exhausting." Grace stared at him. "You truly do not understand, do you? What it is like for the rest of us?" Daniel shrugged. "I guess not. I mean, I get scared sometimes. When I was a kid, I was scared of the dark. I was scared of thunderstorms. But I learned to manage it. My mom used to say that fear is just your brain trying to protect you. It means well, but sometimes it makes mistakes. You have to learn when to listen to it and when to tell it to be quiet. And facing a shadow maw, Your brain did not tell you to run. A little. But then I looked at the creature, and I saw how scared it was. All those people screaming, all those lights, all those strange smells. It was in a new place with nobody it knew. It was terrified. And I thought, why would I run from something that's just as scared as I am? Grace was quiet for a long time. Your species is very strange, she finally said. I know. But strange isn't always bad, right? Before Grace could answer, a message appeared on Daniel's communication device. It was from Professor Thelvan. He wanted to see Daniel in his office immediately. The professor's office was full of strange things. Bones from creatures Daniel had never seen. Plants that glowed and hummed. Screens showing data from 100 different experiments. And in the corner, behind a small energy barrier, a tank of water containing something with too many eyes. Professor Thelvan sat behind a desk made from some kind of red wood. His compound eyes watched Daniel as he entered and sat down. Do you know why you are here? The professor asked. Because of the Shadow Maw? Because of what you did to the Shadow Maw. Or rather, what you did not do. The professor pressed a button. A hologram appeared above his desk. It showed Daniel sitting in the demonstration hall. It showed the Shadow Maw curled around his feet. It showed the creature's spines, completely flat and relaxed. In 300 years of study, no one has ever seen a Shadow Maw display this behavior. They do not relax. They do not sleep in the presence of other beings. They are always hunting, always watching, always ready to kill. Maybe she was tired, Daniel said. She was not tired. She was calm. She was, according to every measurement we could take, completely at peace. The professor leaned forward. Do you understand what this means? Daniel shook his head. It means everything we know about apex predators might be wrong. It means the fear response, which we thought was universal, might not be universal at all. It means humans might be able to interact with dangerous creatures in ways no other species can. So, that's good? Professor Thelvan made a sound that the translator struggled with. It finally settled on complicated amusement. It is unprecedented. The Galactic Council has already requested a full report. Researchers from 17 different worlds have asked to interview you. The Shadow Maw herself has refused to eat since you left her. She sits in her containment area and makes a sound that our translators cannot interpret. She won't eat? Daniel sat up straight. Is she okay? Can I see her? The professor's compound eyes spun in a way that suggested surprise. You wish to see her again? Of course. If she's not eating, something's wrong. Maybe she's lonely. Maybe she misses me. She's an apex predator. She does not get lonely. How do you know? Have you ever asked her? Professor Thelvan opened his mouth to respond. Then he closed it again. He had been studying xenobiology for over a century. He had never once considered asking a predator how it felt. I will arrange a visit, he said slowly. But you must understand the risks. The behavior she displayed might have been temporary. She might attack you the moment you enter her space. Daniel smiled. She won't. How can you be certain? Because she trusts me now. And I don't break trust. The professor stared at the human for a long moment. Then he made that complicated amusement sound again. Your species, he said, is going to change everything. I'm not sure if that frightens me or excites me. Why not both? Daniel asked. He stood up to leave, already thinking about what snacks he might bring for his new friend. Behind him, Professor Thelvan began writing the most important report of his career. It was titled, First Contact with Earth's Apex Predator Handlers, a new classification of sentient species. The word Deathworlder no longer seemed adequate. Humans were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before, something that looked at monsters and saw friends waiting to be made. Daniel visited the Shadow Maw every day after that. He named her Luna because of the way her black scales reflected light, like moonlight on dark water. The scientists thought the name was too simple for such a dangerous creature. Daniel did not care what the scientists thought. Luna started eating again on his second visit. She waited until he arrived, then ate her food while he sat nearby and talked to her about his classes. She seemed to like hearing his voice. Her spines would go flat whenever he spoke, and that deep purring sound would start in her chest. By the end of his first month at the academy, Luna would only let Daniel enter her containment area. She would hiss and spit electricity at anyone else who came close. But for Daniel, she was gentle. She would rest her massive head in his lap and let him scratch behind her spines. She would make that strange purring sound that no Shadow Maw had ever made before. The video of their first meeting spread across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched a human sit calmly while the most dangerous predator in existence curled up at his feet. The reactions were mixed. Some species called humans insane. Some called them brave. Some called them too stupid to know when they should be afraid. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humans were different. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. They needed to update their classification system. Humans had been labeled as Deathworlders because they came from a dangerous planet. But that label no longer seemed adequate. Plenty of species came from dangerous planets. None of them could do what Daniel had done. After many debates, they created a new classification, Omega Deathworld Domesticators. The name was meant to be a warning. It meant that humans did not just survive on dangerous worlds. They did not just fight dangerous creatures. They befriended them. They tamed them. They turned predators into pets and monsters into companions. When Daniel heard about the new classification, he laughed. "Domesticators," he said to Grace. "Like we're all just running around with dog treats in our pockets. Are you not?" Grace asked. She had seen Daniel's endless supply of snacks. She had watched him train Luna to do simple tricks using dried fruit as rewards. That's different. Luna is special. She is a creature that has killed thousands of beings. She was lonely and scared. Nobody ever tried to be nice to her before. Grace made that sound again. Daniel had finally figured out what it meant. It was not complete mental breakdown. It was something closer to "I cannot believe this is real, but I have to accept it anyway." More humans arrived at the academy over the following years. Each one proved that Daniel was not unique. His species simply had no sense of proper fear. Emily Stone came in Daniel's second year. She was a small woman with red hair and a loud laugh. During a survival training exercise, a pack of void stalkers was released into the training grounds. These creatures hunted in groups. They were fast, silent, and completely without mercy. Students were supposed to run and hide until the security teams recaptured them. Emily did not run. She sat down in the middle of the training ground and opened a bag of beef jerky. "Here, puppies," she called. "Who wants a treat?" The void stalkers surrounded her. They growled and snapped their jaws. They circled her like sharks circling wounded prey. Emily threw a piece of jerky to the biggest one. It caught the jerky in its mouth. It chewed. It sat down. Emily threw more jerky. More void stalkers sat down. By the time the security teams arrived, Emily had named all 7 void stalkers. She called them Rex, Max, Buddy, Shadow, Ghost, Fang, and Mr. Snuggles. The security teams tried to take them away. The void stalkers refused to leave Emily's side. She kept all 7 as pets. For the rest of her time at the academy, the third human to arrive was named Brandon Cole. He was tall and quiet and spent most of his time in the biology labs. One day, a venomous spikeling escaped from its containment tank. These creatures were deadly. Their poison could kill most species within seconds. The entire lab was evacuated. Brandon found the spikeling hiding under a desk. It was small and scared, and its spines were standing straight up. "Hey, little guy," Brandon said. "Are you lost?" He picked it up with his bare hands. The spikeling spines pressed against his skin. On any other species, this would have meant instant death. But human skin was thick and tough, evolved over millions of years on a planet where everything wanted to kill them. Brandon felt a slight tingling. Nothing more. He named the spikeling Noodle and carried it in his jacket pocket for the rest of his education. It slept there during classes. It ate scraps from his lunch. It hissed at anyone else who came close but let Brandon pet it whenever he wanted. The stories kept growing. Humans who swam with acid-blooded eels. Humans who made friends with parasites that had consumed entire planets. Humans who looked at the most terrifying creatures in the galaxy and said, "I want that one." The Galactic Council updated their warnings about humans. They were now listed as extreme threat level in the official databases. Not because humans would attack other species, but because humans could not be controlled by fear. They could not be intimidated. They could not be scared into submission. And worst of all, they kept adopting everyone else's monsters. Years passed. Daniel graduated from the academy with top honors. He became the galaxy's first expert in apex predator psychology. His research changed how scientists thought about dangerous creatures. His method saved countless lives. Luna came with him when he left. The academy tried to keep her. They said she was too dangerous to leave their containment facilities. They said she would kill someone the moment she was unsupervised. Daniel pointed out that Luna had not hurt anyone in 3 years. He pointed out that she followed him everywhere like a puppy. He pointed out that she cried when he was away for more than a few hours. The academy gave up arguing. Fighting with humans was pointless. They always found a way to get what they wanted. Daniel took Luna back to Earth. He built a special habitat for her behind his family's home in Montana. The land was wide and empty, with forests and mountains where she could run and hunt. But she spent most of her time on the porch, sleeping in the sun while Daniel worked nearby. His neighbors were scared at first. They had seen the news reports. They knew what a Shadowmall was. But over time, they got used to her. They waved when they drove by. Some of them even stopped to say hello. Luna never hurt any of them. She learned to be gentle with the small humans who came to visit. She let Daniel's little sister ride on her back. She played fetch with the neighbors' children, though she always won because nobody could throw far enough to challenge her. At night, Daniel would sit on the porch with his oldest friend. Luna would rest her massive head in his lap, just like she had on that first day in the demonstration hall. The stars would shine above them, and Daniel would tell her about his work, about the new creatures he was studying, about the new friends he was making across the galaxy. Luna would purr. And sometimes, when the night was very quiet, Daniel would remember what Professor Thelvon had said all those years ago. Your species is going to change everything. He looked down at the 3-ton nightmare sleeping in his lap. He thought about Emily and her pack of void stalkers. He thought about Brandon and his pocket-sized death machine. He thought about all the humans who were spreading across the galaxy, making friends with things that should have killed them. Maybe the professor was right. Maybe humans were changing everything. But Daniel did not think of it that way. He just thought of Luna. He thought of her loneliness and her fear and her desperate need to be loved. He thought of all the creatures in the galaxy who were labeled as monsters simply because nobody had ever tried to be kind to them. We're not special, he said softly, scratching behind Luna's spines. We're just stubborn. Too stubborn to run away when something scares us. Luna purred louder. Daniel smiled. But maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all anyone needs. Someone too stubborn to give up on them. The stars shone down on them. The night was peaceful. And somewhere across the galaxy, another human was probably making friends with something impossible. That was just what humans did. They looked at the monsters and saw the scared creatures hiding inside. They offered kindness instead of fear. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. It always worked. Because in the end, nothing in the universe was too dangerous to love. You just had to be brave enough to try.